Hey guys, how's it going? We're finally back to it. We're finally back to working on the Corvette. And today, I don't know, I'm doing plugs and wires, maybe, but it might end up being just the next step of pulling the engine out too, depending on what it's like when I get into this thing. Honestly, I've replaced everything else related to the ignition and the evap system in this car, except for the plugs and wires. The plugs and wires were done probably about 5-6 years ago when I first got the car. So it's possible. They're bad. I've only put, I don't know, 10,000 miles max probably on the car since that was done. So I doubt that's the problem. Again, with a rebuild, these are items I'm gonna replace anyway. Gonna do plugs, gonna do wires. So I figure, may as well go ahead and do them today. I'm gonna start over on the driver's side of the car today. Something I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna move a bunch of stuff out of the way here. I'm gonna go ahead and probably remove the alternator, remove that bracket. I'm gonna remove this ASR stupid whatever thing out of the way just to give me more room down here. So we're gonna start by doing that really quick. I've already started taking this out. I've already pulled, there's a cover on here that's for the, or a bolt on here that holds this cover on. And then there's this weird plastic thing on the bottom you just unsnap and this comes off. And then after you get that bolt off, there's just this cover, this little strap that wraps around the actual motor there. I just unstrap that and this pops off. And then I've already kind of gone through and taken out some of the bolts that hold this on. So on the back side here, there's 3 bolts that actually hold this thing to the car. I've got the top one out. I've got this one out, and then this one's it's loosened. I've just got to finish pulling that out. And then there was 1 bolt on this little bracket right here that I've already removed as well. And they were all just like 10mm bolts. And then before I get too much further into this, I am going to go ahead and just disconnect the battery on the side here because I'm going to be messing with the alternator. The wire goes from the battery to the alternator to the charge the alternator, so that. So I'm going to do all that really quick, disconnect it, and then start pulling stuff apart. And now I've got this unbolted, so I can just move it out of the way and I can actually access everything a lot easier through there now. Like I said, in order just to really see where those wires come through down here and make sure I get them correct, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the alternator out so I can see down in there a little bit better. I'm gonna try to do this without removing the water pump on the front there, just because I've recently done the water pump and I would like to just do the plugs and wires really quick and see if I can make this work. And something I see down there, I don't know if that's an issue or not. There's this evap hose right here that comes from the air pump up to the exhaust system. It looks like there's maybe a little check valve here that I don't have anything connected to. And to be honest, I don't know if there's supposed to be a hose connected there. I'm gonna grab my my manual, whatever the Corvette book's called, and take a look just to see, because if there's supposed to be a vacuum hose routed there, I want to make sure I get one put back there. I doubt, again, that has anything to do with the issue I'm having. Even if there is a hose missing, it probably just has to do with some of the evap codes maybe I had received that probably don't affect the car running very much. All right, so ASR, the little box thing I'm moving out of the way. You know, that actually has to do with the traction control on these cars. You may notice on your dash, if you have that, there's an option to push a button. It says ASR off or ASR on or whatever. But what the ASR is the acceleration slip regulation is what that stands for. Again, just traction control on the car. So if you go to floor it and tires are spinning, it detects it and it backs off that throttle. You'll feel that on the throttle pedal when you accelerate in these cars. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about that own these cars. And since I'm going to remove the alternator, I've got to move the belt. So that's where this handy tool comes in place. It's a belt tensioner tool. Makes this super simple. Put it down on the tensioner, turn it so it loosens the belt tension and the belt slides right off. Definitely a worthwhile investment. I'll link it down below, along with the other tools I'm using for this job, just so you guys have a link to those if you need them for your garage. All right, then to remove the alternator, you disconnect the cable that runs the charge cable that runs to the battery on the back there. Again, make sure your battery is disconnected. And then on the front here, there's these 2 Torx bolts. One of them has a nut on the back we'll have to hold in place. It's like a 16mm, but these are like a T50. You're just gonna grab your ratchet with a T50 or whatever tool you have, and you're gonna loosen these, and then there's gonna be one bolt on the back, and that alternator is gonna come right out here. All right, these cars are old, 25, 26 plus years old. So when you're doing this, you'll have to be really careful with this alternator plug. There's a chance that it could fall apart if you haven't done anything with it recently. They get really hot, they get really brittle. They do sell repair kits, but just be careful pulling this out. After you get the bolts out, you're gonna pry it up, and that plug is gonna be right down on the bottom side there. So just be careful taking that out. Just a little tip on these. I'm putting the bolts back in the mounting location on the bracket, so that way I don't have to worry about setting them aside and losing them. And I can put this aside, everything I need to reinstall is going to be there, make it really simple later. So next up, we're going to pull out we're going to pull it out. We're going to move the air conditioning compressor. So this guy right here, it looks like there's a bracket here. It bolts on down here, and it probably bolts on the top right here. And then it should pop out of the way. This hose up here, it does have rubber, so it should allow me to move it a little bit. I don't know how much. So we may have to actually totally disconnect it. My AC, last time the car ran, was needing recharged anyway. Probably needs all the seals replaced. So we might just disconnect the whole compressor, actually move it out of the way so I can get to the rest of that bracket. I'm gonna probably have to put my power steering pump out. I do notice when I'm looking, you guys can maybe see it on the ground. It's like shiny. It looks like power steering fluid because it's leaking from up under the front there somewhere. So I might have a power steering pump leak or possibly a line leak. I did replace the power steering lines on this thing a couple years ago, so I'm thinking it maybe is the pump or even the rack, which I don't know how hard that is to do, but we're gonna find out, I guess. All right, so next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take out this back alternator bracket. I've already loosened the bolts, one bolt there on top of the intake. I'm gonna pull that out of the way. And like I said, then we're gonna disconnect the bolts here and hopefully move this pump out of the way here. You can definitely see power steering pump is leaking out of the line right down there. So it'll either be a line replacement or possibly a pump replacement. Looks like it's probably just a line on there though. It's probably just wore out. So while we're in here, we'll run the new line across that over to the reservoir, which is on the other side over there. And we'll get that swapped out. And then now I can actually see where my plug wires run through to the distributor down on the back side there, which is better than I've ever had before. So I might be able to do the wires now and make sure I get them run the correct way. So I've gone ahead and jacked up the car. A couple reasons. First, just to find out for sure where it's leaking, and it's like I said, definitely that hose for the power steering fluid, so I'm going to change that. The car's been sitting really for a couple years now, so stuff's bound to leak. And then also make it a little bit easier for me to get down in there and get those plug wires off the distributor back there, the OptiSpark, and then route them up through this way. I'm gonna make sure I get them routed through carefully so they're not touching the exhaust manifold, stuff like that. I'm not sure if I have to get to those from the bottom or if I can get through from the top. It looks like I can get them right here. And honestly, my idler pulley is bad too. I mean, it's sticking. It doesn't spin. So I'm gonna get a new idler pulley while I'm in here, replace that really quick. It's, I don't know, 30 bucks probably. But just do some other things while I'm in here really quick. Like I said, I may put the plugs and wires in and just start it up to see what happens. Or I might just continue with this teardown. And you know, as I start digging into this more and more and I jack the car up and I see the fluids leaking everywhere and stuff, I am just gonna go ahead and just finish pulling the motor. I'm not gonna swap out the plugs and wires. Like I said, I need them for when I do the rebuild and put everything back in anyway. I did order the like Blue Streak premium plug wires and got some good NGK plugs for it and stuff. So I am just gonna continue this teardown though. Get the engine ready to get pulled out. We'll get it stroked. Like I said, 383, maybe at 396. I think at 396 would be cool. But just as I look under the car, I see everything leaking. I see how dirty the engine bay is. Things like that. I realize I want to clean it up. I want to make it look good. I'm going to go ahead and just continue the process. So just consider this a part 2 of the stroker build. And We'll have more coming up as I start digging into it. It's getting warmer out, the weather's getting nicer, so I'll be working on my car more and more, so I'll have more regular videos coming to the channel with my Corvette, so watch for those. So this will be, like I said, part 2 of I don't know, however many parts there ends up being, but I'm not in a hurry to get this done. I've got all the time in the world. But stay tuned, be sure to like, subscribe, all that stuff, and until next time.